Welcome to Original Being, where we explore the timeless wisdom of ancient practices and old ways of living, from holistic health and wellness to survival techniques, homesteading, and primitive skills. I'm Jillian Erice, a functional and holistic-minded physician associate and a homesteading mother of 3. I am on a quest to reconnect with this knowledge our ancestors lived by, practical skills, natural healing, and self-sufficiency in a modern world. Each episode, I'll be sharing insights, experiences, and conversations with experts and everyday people who embody this mindset. Together, we'll challenge modern conveniences, embrace hands-on learning, and rediscover the practices that have stood the test of time. Disclaimer, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. My opinions and those of my guests are solely our own and are not affiliated with any institutions, employers, or certifications. This podcast does not provide medical advice, and any health-related decisions should be made in consultation with your personal healthcare provider. By listening, you acknowledge that you take full responsibility for your own choices and actions.
Today on Original Being, we have Grace Douglas. Grace is an herbalist, metalworker, and primitive skills enthusiast from Northwest Washington State. She lives on Lummi, Samish, and Nooksack territory. She loves learning about the native plants and animals around her. Grace was born into a fishing family and joins them to fish in Alaska in the summers. She currently works as a clinical herbalist, supporting clients to achieve their health goals through herbal medicine and nutrition, along with her metal business, Graka Metalworks, where she makes knives and other functional metal art. Hi, Grace.
Hey, Jill.
So I wanted to ask you, I like to start with just how people got to where they are today. So I'd love to hear about maybe your childhood a little bit and like how you got into this. Have you always been into herbalism and homesteading and the metalworking, or did this just come up sort of as time has gone on?
Yeah, that's a good question and a good thing for me to think about. I think the metal and the herbs have shown up in very different ways in my life. But yeah, I grew up in the county in the woods, and my mom always had a huge garden and we had a bunch of animals. I was always in the dirt, but we weren't like homesteaders. But I also, as you mentioned, I grew up in a fishing family. So yeah, we did a lot of like supporting ourselves with fish and vegetables from the garden, and my dad used to be more into hunting. He'd harvest a lot of the meat that we would eat, including fishing, but also deer and ducks and other animals sometimes, depending on the year. But then with the herbal stuff, when I was about 15 or 16, my family would go to a close friend's Cinco de Mayo party every year, and one of the women there, she was an herbalist and she owned the local herb shop in town, and something just like shifted for me, and she gave me a tour of a bunch of plants, and I was like, what? People can just like work with herbs for a living? This is a thing? Like I could do this? So then I started kind of apprenticing with her and seeking out herbal conferences and doing a lot of work trade and just like trying to learn as much as I could, because I was just so fascinated with local plants, native plants, and their medicinal uses and traditional uses, and like interesting stories about them. So yeah, that's where it began, and I've just built onto that since then, which was over 10 years ago. Yeah, so that's how I got into the herb stuff. And then the metalwork, about 5 years ago, I found this guy on Guaymas Island who is a blacksmith and knifesmith. And I found out about him. A couple people told me about him. I don't really know why. It just seemed sort of like I don't know why they
was meant to be.
Him. Yeah. At that time, I was really interested in learning more about primitive skills, and I think maybe that was why. Because there aren't many known blacksmiths in the area. I think more and more are coming out of the woodworks. But yeah, I ended up reaching out to him and asking him if I could apprentice with him. And he was kind of hesitant. He was like, oh, I'm kind of a one-man show, but why don't you come out sometime and check out my shop and let's see if we get along. And I did like a year later because I went fishing and then I like had my farm and but I like had him in the back of my mind and I like wanted to follow through on it. So eventually I did, and I went out there and we got along so well, and now he's like my uncle slash good friend. And
I love that.
yeah, really grateful for that experience. And yeah, now I'm kind of doing my own metal thing. As of October, I really dove into my own business.
Well, we can talk about that more in a little bit. I want to go back to the herbal stuff because I know you started your business, Wild Vitality Herbal, before going to school to become a clinical herbalist. And you already had a lot of knowledge and were making some really amazing products prior to that. How would you say that training, that like more formal training, has changed your herbal practice, or how are you approaching things now? Is it any different than before?
Formal training as in the clinical program?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think, well, it's very different because a lot of my herbal training over the years has been less, well, not, I mean, a lot of it has been based in science, but it's also been based in like traditional uses and folk uses and less like clinical, in the sense of like having a therapeutic dose and working with integrative, like with Western medicine. So having a better knowledge of the physiology and anatomy and chemistry and people's medication that they might be on, and understanding how to work with that so that you don't so there isn't a bad like interaction between the herbs and the medications that someone might be on. So I think it really like gave me a deeper understanding of what's actually happening in the body with certain illnesses or certain conditions. I mean, the whole thing, my whole time being an herbalist has been, I've been deeply interested in getting to the root and the source of what's causing all of the things that like have a cascade effect. But rather than like treating a symptom, I've always been interested in like treating the whole person. And I think the clinical training gave me a better understanding of like what is going on an anatomical level, like looking at just how different illnesses work in the body, how they affect different systems of the body. And yeah, a deeper like view into the body in a way that was like, and it was a 3-year program, so it was very intensive. And my training, most of my herbal training has been like self-study or doing a 4-day conference or something like that. That's not necessarily an ongoing program all year for 3 years. So yeah, I learned a lot. And another part of the clinical training was getting comfortable or getting hands-on experience with working with clients one-on-one. Whereas before I was focusing more on products that were more like for the general public, like a bitters blend for improving digestion or like a sleep time blend or whatever it might be. And I really enjoy working one-on-one with a client because you can really get it. I mean, everybody's different and everybody has a different experience of something, and no two people have like the exact same everything. So I think it's really fascinating to take in the physical, emotional, mental aspects of someone's experience and try and support them with herbs, nutrition, lifestyle habits. That's very customized to them, to that person. It's very personalized.
What kinds of people or what kinds of issues are mostly, do you think clients are coming to you for? Like, is it like, oh, I have this very specific thing and I'd rather treat this naturally than using a pharmaceutical? Or is it more overall, like someone who's already really involved in, maybe integrative types of practices and now just wants a little bit of herbal support? What kinds of things are you seeing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's interesting to like find some common things in my clients. For a while, I was seeing like a lot of my clients were coming with hormone stuff. Like they had a lot of hormone imbalances, or wanting to like come off of birth control and not knowing like how to do that in a safe way or like in a way that felt good to them, and wanting support with alternative birth control essentially. I've also had a lot of clients with going through perimenopause that are seeking alternative or like natural remedies rather than, I don't know, being put on something from a doctor, or clients who have tried a bunch of stuff from their doctor and nothing has really helped, or it hasn't like satisfied them, and wanting another person a part of their healthcare team. But I would say that a lot of my clients have not had much experience with herbs, which I think is really cool to be an educator in that way, and to and usually, I mean, there's been a lot of positive experiences. I feel like it's been like people who have never tried herbs that try that, or are seeking support for nutrition. The outcomes have been very positive, and it's not to say that someone shouldn't also listen to their doctor and take that advice, and maybe they're still taking medication from their doctor, but I think the herbs have felt very like holistic and nutritive and supportive for anyone, whether they're new to it or have experience in it and need someone to like hold them more accountable, or want some guidance in where with the herbs that they're working with. So yeah, I don't know if that like was a very clear answer, but there have been themes for sure, and I think it's really enjoyable for me to have clients who both have not had experience with herbs and also like are really into it, and then we can like nerd out on it together and talk about like they could tell me what they want or goals that they have or like herbs that they feel really drawn to, and then I can try and incorporate that into the protocol and the formulas that I make for them.
Yeah, you can't address health without addressing nutrition. So I wonder, has that been a barrier at all for you? If someone comes to you and they're almost wanting that Western medical model treatment of like, here's a tincture for this, here's this for this, and just like it's a quick fix, which we really don't see in herbalism because things are slower. And you have to have nutrition as the foundation too. So I know that you address that with your clients, but has there been any pushback on that? Like, oh, this isn't what I thought. I thought I was just going to come and get like, this thing for this symptom or something like that.
Yeah. Not really. I mean, yeah, I guess like on some level, maybe there's some resistance just because it's like culturally that's like what we're so used to. But I feel like I am very clear about that in the beginning, like in my intro when I have a new client in our initial consultation, I have like a spiel that I go into that and want to make sure people understand how I can support them. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not gonna just like cure your symptoms with certain things. That's not my goal, I mean, obviously we want to relieve symptoms, but the goal isn't just to treat the symptoms. The goal is to the underlying cause of the symptoms. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't really felt that. I also have had people, and maybe this is where it kind of like weeds out those people, but I offer a free 15-minute discovery call with people, and I feel like I really go into that during that conversation, and a couple people haven't set up an initial consultation before, so it's possible that they like wanted more. But yeah, I haven't gotten a ton of pushback, but it's also like it's a conversation that we can have. I don't really support diets or like diet or elimination of anything when it's not really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I'm really able to like have these conversations with people. If there's some hesitation that I can sense, or they're uncomfortable with something or whatever, we can hopefully talk about it. And I'm here as someone who is supporting you in your health journey, and it's all about the client. I'm not in control of your health, and if I will match someone with where they're at and what they're comfortable with. That makes sense.
Yeah. I've often wondered too, do you ever see people for more acute things? Like in that same kind of vein, obviously I'm coming from, this allopathic medical model, but I think, what if someone, has an acute sickness, like they have a virus, like they've got the flu, and they want to come to you saying like, just right now, just for this, what can I do? Is that something that's offered too, or is it usually more like chronic things?
No, for sure, acute stuff. Absolutely. It's come up with clients where we'll be working together, and usually, ideally, working with an herbalist, it is, like you said, a slow thing. So you're maybe working with them for like 6 months to a year to forever. Not forever. The goal isn't to need an herbalist forever, but it's a longer relationship. And throughout that, acute things do come up. Like, someone might have the flu, or we have smoke season here, and there can be a lot of respiratory issues that come up. And I've had people with like some panic attack stuff, like acute anxiety, and I'm like, of course, yeah, acute conditions are definitely something that I am able to support in however I can. I mean, I can't say that it always like works, but I'll try. But usually that comes up in like a long-standing relationship. I think if someone reached out to me randomly and asked for support with something, I would still say like, yeah, of course. How can I help you? But that's less common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for people who don't know, because I know certain schools and certain places, there's actual apothecaries you can sort of write almost like an herbal prescription. Is that something you're still doing or that you have access to, or how is that working now?
Yeah, I have my own apothecary. So it's a little less involved.
So you have your own apothecary that if you're telling someone, I would like you to try X, Y, and Z, you're able to formulate that and send that to them or give that to them if they're in person?
Yeah, so what I do is after an initial consultation or follow-up, I write the protocol for them that includes their formulas, any nutritional recommendations, any diet or lifestyle recommendations, and anything else that like, I told you I was going to send you this. Here's a good link for blah, 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 whatever. And I send it to the client for them to approve the formulas that I came up with. And once they approve those formulas, I'll fill them in my apothecary. Or then that's where I would, like, if I didn't have something and I didn't want to carry it in my apothecary for whatever reason, I would then send it off to a different herb shop and get it filled from someone else. And then they'd ship it to the client.
That's really cool. I didn't know that you had that much, that you were growing that much and making that much for this now. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I do grow a lot, but I don't grow everything. I get, there's a bulk wholesale tincture company that's only for practitioners. So I get a lot of tinctures from them, like for herbs that don't grow well around here, which is kind of a lot. Like a lot of Ayurvedic and Chinese herbs don't grow well around Northwest Washington State. So I do outsource a bit, but it's pretty high quality and I feel really good about that.
That's really cool. So what are you growing these days?
Ooh, it's early spring. I'm excited for things to start popping up. I'm growing a lot. Should I list it all?
Yeah, I want to know everything.
But I don't know if I'll get to everything.
Yeah, well, you can remember.
Yeah, what I can remember, I'll try and like go down the rows as I remember them. I'm growing bee balm, a lot of raspberry, for raspberry leaf. I have a few elderberry trees, skullcap, pennyroyal, motherwort, mugwort, anise hyssop, regular hyssop, lemon balm, a bunch of different mints, chamomile, calendula, Oh gosh, echinacea and yarrow. Blue vervain. What are some others? You know some others. Kind of like
I know I have most of those in my garden too, but not at the level that you are growing.
well, I've really scaled back over the past couple of years just to focus more on like smaller quantities of medicine and to have more of an educational garden. So it's less farm like in the like efficiency sense of the word and more large garden educational zone.
Is this still on the island or this is on the mainland now?
No, this is on the mainland, in Everson. Yeah.
Nice. So medicine wise, are you, once this stuff starts coming up, are you just making medicine all the time, or what, how do you approach, like, I always wonder this for my own garden because it's a much smaller scale, but it's still a decent amount. And as time goes on and I've got vegetables and I've got herbs and I've got the kids and things going, I sometimes am missing stuff before it's gone to seed, or I'm just not continuously harvesting in the way I should be. Do you have like a method for like, I'm going to dry this, I'm going to do this? Is there any kind of like method to that? Or are you just sort of like going through the motions as it's all coming up?
Yeah, great question. No, I don't have a method. I think over the past couple years, I've tried to, and especially launching my metal business and getting more into metal art and blacksmith stuff. And with working one-on-one with clients, because I've really scaled back with making products. I don't really make products anymore for like the general public. And my goal is to work more one-on-one with clients and teach classes and then do my metal stuff. So I think I'm someone who like gets really stressed out when like during growing season, and I think I used to be like, I need to get every herb when it's ready and prepare it. And it's become way too much. And I'm trying to be more, just like not need to be that person. And if I miss it, if I miss the season for whatever it might be, or like I let it go too far, then I'm out of that herb, then I feel totally fine just like buying that from another small farmer or whatever. And there are a lot around here. So no, I don't have a method. It's more like when I have energy and time, can I get to it? And in a way that I can enjoy and not like I don't want it to be summer's like already so busy and crazy and chaotic, and I want to be able to enjoy it. I want to be able to enjoy the harvest and the process of making medicine. And when it's an obligation to like get to all of them, it's not as fun. So I do it. And also I don't need to make new like tincture every year because sometimes I'll have some from last year.
Yeah, a huge amount.
And drying an herb is way easier. Like I could just put it in the dehydrator, hang it up to dry, and then deal with it when the season slows down a little bit. So, so I guess, yeah, maybe there is a method, but it's more like muscle memory, intuitive. Like I'll harvest you now, but I'll deal with you later. Like I'll like process. I'll like hang it up to dry, and then I'll process it when I have time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common for me. I'll like hang it up, and then the drying room is just like a jungle of hanging herbs. And then I'll like get to it later.
Yeah. I'm finding that like I'm going to tailor my garden more and more to what we're really using. Like Mike loves anise hyssop and loves it just like in tea. And now we've already, like probably a month ago, went through what we had, and I grew a lot. We just weren't harvesting. I didn't dry that much of it.
Yeah.
And then this year he's like, we need to grow more of that. We need to harvest more. We need to dry more. I'm like, yeah, I mean, we used it and you love it, and let's do more. So I need to just like keep making note. And like you said too, last year I had a lot of leftover tinctures of especially like lemon balm and some stuff from the year before. And I didn't make anything last year. I didn't even really harvest much of those, but now they're all gone. So we'll have to do that again this year. So I think you're right. Like it is kind of cyclical from your needs, and for you, I'm sure you're bringing your clients' needs into it too. So it's not just yours, but what you find is being utilized the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you doing vegetables too?
Yes. Well, yeah, I did last year. I think I'll maybe do a little bit less. I started leasing this land and it felt just so exciting, and I had a big chunk of greenhouse space, so I just went crazy. And I thought I would have like a couple people were like, "Yeah, I want to do that with you." And it kind of like we all had our own things going on, so it ended up being like I just had a lot more on my plate than I could really handle. And I go fishing in Alaska in the summertime. I did a bunch of weeding before I left, but when I got back, it was just like it was
Overgrown,
just to keep up with. So, but yeah, I grew like probably 40 feet of tomatoes, which was
wow.
too much. But
Did you can them?
I canned a bunch of them. I gave a bunch of them away to people. And it was so fun. Like being tomato rich is like such heirloom, like beautiful heirloom tomatoes was I just like bring like crates of them to people, and
That's awesome.
thing to give away.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
That's the funny thing with just like talking about like altering what you grow each year. The year before this past season, I didn't grow any zucchini. I just was like, whatever. I don't know if I just, for whatever reason, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So then this year I was like, oh, I'm just going to put zucchini like everywhere. I really missed having zucchini last year. So I just kind of kept like putting it in like random spots. I try to like interplant a lot of things. And we had so much. Like, I know that it's a joke. Like, everyone knows you get a lot of zucchini, but like massive ones, like tons of them. We did like every possible thing you could do with zucchini.
Awesome. Did you dry it for the winter?
Yeah, I did. I dehydrated and made like a zucchini flour, which it's not amazing tasting, but I did try that out, which was cool. And then I froze a bunch, which has been great. I mean, even I put it in smoothies now, like just frozen to like thicken up smoothies, which is nice. So we did a lot of different stuff with it.
Nice. That's great.
But going back to that herbalism, what would you say is, or what plants are you really like enjoying right now? What kind of herbs are you personally enjoying and working with right now?
Well, it is still winter, so everything is dried that I'm working with mostly. We have some native evergreen shrubs like salal and evergreen huckleberry, and they make really great tea. It's pretty astringent, but I really like that right now as I'm like preparing. And it's one of the few, well, I guess there's a lot of things you can make tea out of right now, but it's not necessarily like good or safe in large quantities. But yeah, I've been enjoying salal and evergreen huckleberry for teas, fresh tea, and just like trying to get myself ready for eating only wild foods. But I've also been making a lot of chamomile and skullcap tea for just, I don't know. I love skullcap is probably one of my favorite plants, and I love chamomile for its relaxing and digestive abilities or support that it gives for that.
Yeah, we love chamomile here. I always tell everybody I think it's like the most underrated of all the herbs.
Yeah.
Because it's so common that people kind of overlook it. Like, it's not fancy and everyone's heard of it and it's been around forever, but it's so safe and it has so many uses, and it's so underrated. And especially good quality, because I think a lot of people think of chamomile and they think of like, a little cheap tea bag. So like good quality like chamomile is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. And sometimes I rarely put honey in my tea, but sometimes when I'm feeling a little like I need something sweet, I'll put some honey in my chamomile tea, and it's so good.
Do you keep bees? I can't remember. Are you trying to keep bees?
But when I grew up with, we had well, I shouldn't say we had mason bees because they're wild bees, but we made little like houses for the mason bees. I could be wrong about this, but I think it's the only or one of the only native bees around here, and they don't produce honey, but they're really incredible pollinators, and they're one of the first. I think they are the first bee to come out like early spring.
Okay.
And I just got a little house and some little cocoons.
Oh.
I'm gonna have some bees, some mason bees.
That's awesome.
Yeah. but no honey.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Besides chamomile, are there any other herbs that you think are really underrated that maybe more people could benefit from taking on a regular basis or incorporating into their lives?
Yeah. Well, I would say skullcap, especially given the state of the world right now and how
Yeah, we need nervines.
I think, and just like how easy it is to, I mean, I guess not everyone like looks at the news all the time, but I feel like it can just really like up regulate our nervous systems to be like hyperactive all the time. And I think skullcap is one of my best herb friends for that because it just really brings you down. And I had my first panic attack a couple years ago, and skullcap was the thing that like brought me down. So, and it's also really safe. It's in the mint family. It's not aromatic like what we think of mints to be, but I think it's pretty tasty. It's like earthy and a little minerally and slightly bitter, but not too bitter. I would say chamomile can get way more bitter than skullcap.
Yeah, or blue vervain. It's really bitter.
Yeah, not nearly as bitter as that. Yeah, I think skullcap is a good one, and it's not as easy to come by as chamomile, but you'd find it in any herb shop, and you could order it from Mountain Rose, I'm sure, or a local farmer.
Yeah.
Also milky oats. That's I mean, yeah, that's another underrated plant that a lot of people don't know about because, well, a lot of people who work with herbs know. Everyone.
Yeah, I feel like herbalists love milky oats.
It's like the main one. But when I tell clients about it, they're like oats? Like it's from oats? And it is. It's just the immature seed of the oat seed. And that one is a great nervine also, and very nutritive and pretty tasty. And the three of them together, chamomile, oats, and skullcap, is a great trio.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good combo. So yeah, just in general, like what have you done as far as homesteading in the past, like that you felt was the most, like you felt like that got you toward the most self-sufficiency of anything that you'd done? Or like, was it raising a specific animal or some kind of preserving? What made you feel the most self-sufficient? And what worked the best?
I think, well, yeah, I raised rabbits for meat and sheep, not specifically for meat, mostly because I love working with wool and I wanted to experience the whole cycle of from shearing to cleaning to processing to spinning to knitting. But I also did butcher some of them. I think the most, if I'm answering the question about like the most self-sufficient, I think rabbits would be that for me. I mean, or chickens, I guess, but meat rabbits are rabbits are like one of the most sustainable animals to raise for meat because they don't contribute as much to greenhouse gases or methane production as cows do. Not sure about chickens, but I haven't really gotten much into raising chickens, but yeah, and they take like 5 to 7. I mean, I guess you could harvest them at 12 weeks, but they're pretty quick to mature. 7 weeks, sorry, 5 to 7, or maybe it was 7 to 12. I think we harvested them at 9 weeks. But yeah, they produce, I don't know, it feels kind of weird to like talk about them in such a production way, but we had a lot of fun with them. They were so cute, and I had 2 females that were my like breeding stock, and then 1 male. They were New Zealand. The females were full New Zealand, and the male was New Zealand and something else that I'm forgetting. This was a few years ago, or a couple years ago. But yeah, it was it was a learning curve for sure, because rabbits are definitely more agile than chickens are. So they're little escape artists, and sometimes the rabbits would get out and I would feel like we had to get them, because then they would breed with the native, or I don't even know if they're native rabbits on Famous Island, but they would breed with the wild rabbits, and I didn't want to be contributing to like an overpopulation of rabbits on an island with no predators. I think there's coyotes there now, but anyway, yeah, it was an interesting experience, and it fed us for a really long time. Like we had rabbits in the freezer for like a year. So, and I would
were you colony raising them? Is that how they were escaping? Were they?
Yeah, they were all together. And so, yeah, we kept the parents out, the dad and the moms out. So all the babies were together.
Like, were they in like cages, or did you have them in like a fenced in area?
No, they were in a fenced in area. Yeah. And they would.
That's what I wondered, because I wanted to colony raise. Like, I don't like how they just keep them in these little cages all the time, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
Which, of course, in the winter, we would probably have to do that. But what kind of fencing do you use to keep them in?
Well, it varied a bit. I mean, it was very like, I was like figuring it out as I went. And I was living on this land with a big barn, and we got some movable electric fence that we had for the sheep. And we used it for the rabbits, and it didn't really work. And then we like rigged up some fencing. It was like, if I do it again, which I might, I'm gonna be like way better prepared. I think I was figuring it out in the moment, which was kind of like responding to the escape artists. And like, I'd be like, oh, I'll just like put some wire there, or like block that hole, or like it wasn't like great. I wouldn't say it was like the best system for sure. I think those movable tractors are a good, like, where they're in a big caged in area. At one point we had a big cage, or like, I don't think it had a top. It was just like a big cage, and we would just like move it around to fresh grass whenever they would like eat the clover in the grass down. We just move it around all over the pasture. And then we also...
And they couldn't dig up. Can they dig under?
Sometimes they would dig under. Yeah. It didn't happen like very often, but it did happen. And then at one point I put them in a stall, like in one of the barn stalls, to just like, well, we did it through the winter time. So there was a time where like there weren't fresh greens outside for them to eat. So that's when I put them in a stall in the barn, and I like barricaded it, because like, you know how you can like go under, the stall door didn't go to the ground. And I would like go get wherever I could find any kind of greenery in the winter. I would grab that and throw it in for them, or I would supplement their diet with alfalfa pellets. And for a time they were all in the stall together, and I would just give them food in the stall. But then when the grass came, also that was like not the best time to raise rabbits, was like starting in the winter. And I don't think this is the case I was just a little, because it was my first time, I was a little bit nervous that the babies would get really cold. So sometimes we would like bring them inside. It was chaos. It was amazing. It was so fun. And I would do it again. It felt like...
You would? I thought you had said that it wasn't good killing them, and then you weren't sure you wanted to raise rabbits because it was so sad because they were so cute. Was that true, or did I make that up?
No, definitely. That was true. Yeah, I do feel that way. It was hard. I mean, it's hard to take a life. It's really sad. And it also felt, not that it ever gets easier, but I think this was a time where I wanted to be more self-sufficient. And if I was going to eat meat, I wanted to be able to raise my own meat and kill my own meat. And I still feel that way. And I've gotten more into hunting a little bit. Not that I've like killed I've put in for a deer tag the past 2 years and haven't gotten a deer, but I think I'm more interested in wild animals than like raising them, I guess, and then killing them because, well, not only for this reason, but it's really hard to like establish a relationship, especially the sheep. This was really hard with the sheep because we had names for them and they all had different personalities and they were kind of like dogs, and that I don't know if I'll do that again, butcher my own sheep, but I want to have sheep again. But I think I'm more interested in wool and milk production, or maybe goats for milk production. But yeah, killing the sheep was really hard. I think the rabbits was what it was easier than the sheep because you can't really tell them apart, and while it's still taking a life, it's less. It feels like a little less hard than killing a sheep, or like.
Yeah, they don't have as much identity. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just, I mean, I just like don't know who is who. But it was really sad and it felt like really important for me to do it, to like be a part of that process of harvesting my own meat, because I do eat meat, and while I do support like ethically raised like small farm meat, I think that like, and I don't think that everyone like needs to do this in order to eat meat, but I personally, it's a value for me to like be able to kill an animal if I'm gonna eat an animal. So yeah, and another thing with the rabbits was I think there was a little bit of not pride, but I like wanted to figure it all out on my own. And I didn't have, like, it was just me. I didn't have anyone like, this is what we're doing. I really want to raise rabbits for meat. Like, this was all my doing. And so I've had to figure out how to kill a rabbit. And the first rabbit I killed was horrible. Like, I felt like I mean, I was like, I prepared. I wanted it to be as quick and painless as possible. And I think it wasn't. Like, I mean, it was still quick, and I hope it was painless, but it was a learning experience for me, and it was the first rabbit I had ever killed. After that, there was another person on the island who raised rabbits for meat for her family, and I called her up and was like, hey, I would love some guidance on this, because this is something that I'm doing, and I feel like I'm not doing it in the best way, and I'm wondering how you do it and what you found to be most efficient and like quick and painless. And she came over and showed me, and it was really cool to get her guidance on that. And then she like helped me do it. And I think the moral of that story is like, ask for help when you need to ask
from
someone.
experienced people.
Yeah. I'm really glad I reached out to her, because it was pretty traumatic. I mean, for the rabbit, probably more than me, but it was traumatic for her.
Well, I'll be reaching out to you if we raise them. I wanted to for a long time, but I feel the same way. I'm like, I mean, I am trying to raise our own meat for our family, but rabbits are so hard because of that cute factor. I think there's something about them they're just fuzzy things. Maybe we just associate more with pets. There's something that makes it a little bit harder.
And you have rabbits, don't you? Like, you have pet rabbits.
We have 2 right now that are pets. Yeah, they were supposed to be more fiber rabbits, although I haven't done much with their fiber, to be honest. And then I thought maybe I wanted to raise fiber rabbits, and now I realize that I don't, and I'd rather just raise a meat rabbit or meat rabbits if that's what we're gonna do. But yeah, I have to make sure I can handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe you could reach out to someone else in your area that does that, and they could help you with the first couple. Because I do think it's, as far as like sustainability and like yield, I was really surprised by how much meat we got out of these rabbits, and their poop is like, you can just put it in your garden. It doesn't even have to like decompose for a year. Like, you can.
I know, I love that.
It's like gold. So
I love that so much. Yeah. And how many did you process that lasted you a year?
I think we had like, well, I gave a lot away because I was like, I can't eat the rabbits. I think we had like 27.
But that's still not that many for like giving away and lasting you a whole year. That's great.
Yeah. It was great. And I've been I have a couple chest freezers that are just like full of salmon and meat and mostly skins, like animal hides that either from my animals or that people have given me. And I was collecting rabbit hides from someone who was raising rabbits, and I had like maybe 50 of their rabbit hides in the freezer, and now I have all of mine. And I was thinking about teaching a little hide tanning workshop with the rabbit hides that I have in the freezer. But
I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah.
If you had tanned them.
Oh yeah, I have. I actually have. Oh, I think it's downstairs, but I have one that I recently did with madrona leaf.
Ooh.
You don't
I don't even know about that.
Do you?
I don't think so. I've never heard of it.
It's a beautiful tree that lives on the coast.
That's cool. Yeah, you could make a whole blanket.
Yeah.
With the rabbit skins. That would be amazing.
It would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, so let's talk about the Wild Biome Project. So for those of you that don't know, the Wild Biome Project is a project where you only eat local wild food for, is it 3 months, Grace? 3 months. So tell me how you got into this project. I'm so excited about this. I want to do it someday. I want to hear everything. How did you find out about it, and how did you get into it to be a participant in it?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's actually, you can do it for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months. And I'm doing it for 2.5 is my plan, because it's April. It starts in April, May, and goes through June. But I'm going to Alaska to go fishing mid-June. And I think that's just too much. Like I could just eat salmon, but that's the goal. I think I'm going to do it just 2.5 months because of that. And I learned about it because Monica, or Mo Wild is her name, the person that's organizing it or like started it. I studied with her or apprenticed with her maybe like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, something like that, in Scotland. She's an herbalist and mycologist, and I stayed with her and learned under her and helped her teach some, or I didn't teach. I like was her assistant for teaching mushroom classes and wild food classes, and helped her build. She was working on a cordwood house, which was so fun. I like learned a little bit about natural building. Anyway, so that's how I learned about this project, because she, over the years, has gone deeper into, or I guess been more like, gone deeper into like teaching and sharing her skills and what she's found over the years, and wrote a book recently. And she did the Wild Biome Project 3 years ago, I think. It was her and maybe a couple other people, or maybe it was just her. For a whole year, they did it. And it's just wild foods, nothing cultivated, like nothing that you grow in the garden. Only wild foods, and like wild, like also meat, so like fish and wild game, seaweeds, that sort of thing. Yeah, she did it for a whole year to see how it would affect her body. So she would track, I think she did this for the first year. She took blood tests and stool samples throughout the project to see like what was changing in her body. And she ended up finding like new gut bacteria that had never showed up in her body before. I don't know all of her findings off the top of my head, but she shared this, and I think she has it shared publicly, so that could be, you can find more about like what she's found in her project in this study. But yeah, a lot of health benefits came from this project and eating only wild foods from her local environment. And it was also to see, part of it was to see if she could go a year without buying food, like without spending money, which, yeah, I think that element is really interesting, especially as the world gets scarier and scarier, just being like totally self-sufficient and knowing how to survive if you don't have the resources or yeah, like money or ability to buy food or grow food. So that was part of the interest for me, and I love a challenge, and feel pretty connected to the wild plants around me, and I think I'm excited to see how it goes. So this is the first year that she's opened it to the public. Last year she did a smaller group of like 20 something people of her peers, and they all did it together. And then this year they opened it to the public, where they like opened applications, and only most of the participants are in the UK, and there are 3 of us from the US. Someone from, I think, Colorado, and someone from Hawaii, and then me. Yeah, so that's how I heard about it, and that's the project. And we're all expected to take blood tests and stool samples before, during, and after the project to see it's kind of like a clinical trial, or it's a clinical study in a way, but it's not, because it's not controlled, because we all have different native or like local plants around us. It can't be controlled. It's more just like, I don't know, it's like an uncontrolled study, but there are like guidelines. Like, we can't even buy salt or oil or anything. If we use salt, we have to harvest it from the sea. Or I guess if you live in a place that has salt elsewhere, you could do that, figure that out.
I think that's amazing. I'm so excited to see. Well, what are you preparing? Have you already gotten food from this whole, like, did you know last year and you've been preparing this whole year, like saving stuff and preserving stuff?
Yeah, I think I found out in like maybe end of August that I was accepted into it. Or I don't remember. Sometime in like late summer, where I felt like I still had a bit of time to prepare, but if I had like the whole summer, maybe I would have saved more food. But another thing that Monica has said, or Mo has said, is that a lot of like traditionally, a lot of the food stores that people would save from the wintertime would run out by spring. So you like kind of do start fresh in the spring. So while I do have food stored, and I'll share more about that, I feel like I want that challenge of being, I don't think I have enough food to last me 3 months. There will definitely be a lot of supplementing from food in the spring. Like, I definitely don't. What I have is I have a bunch of acorns that I'm currently leaching right now to get the tannins out, and then I'll make that into flour, and so that will be a good source of like protein, and that will be my main staple food. And I have some frozen wild meat, like fish and some venison and duck. I have I made a bunch of rose hip leather. Like, I made it into a sauce, and some rose hip sauce for like, kind of like, it's like a tomato sauce. It's really delicious. But I have a lot of like dried like fruit leather from mostly from elderberries and rose hips, and I harvested a bunch of wild blueberries last fall, alpine blueberries, and some huckleberries. I plan on harvesting some seaweed and more fish, which will probably be a big part of my diet. And then, by April, we'll start seeing nettles and dandelion and plantain, and those will be like the main greens probably, and also like yellow dock when it's small is really good and tender. Maybe alder. I don't know. I'll just see what comes. I mean, every year it's like a little bit different, so I'll just be supplementing with whatever is coming up. But we have a lot of edible greens around here, so there will be a lot of bitter greens that I will be eating. And I am addicted to coffee, so that I think that will be the hardest one, but I plan on having a lot of roasted dandelion root to substitute my coffee addiction.
Do you guys have chicory there?
Not really. Not like the East Coast. I mean, yeah, we do. We do, but it's less common than dandelion, so I'll probably be eating more dandelion root. But burdock, we have a lot of burdock, so that's another starchy root that I can it's everywhere.
And cattail shoots. You must have that coming up in the spring, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of cattails. Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. Are you going to be documenting this on Instagram, like every day, or what you're eating mostly?
Oh man, I don't know about every day.
Every day, not every day.
Post every day or be on it every day, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I might get so it might be like a way to keep me going by like documenting it, and I don't know. There's definitely a creative element to this of like, well, yeah, Monica, some of the recipes, the wild food recipes they've come up with is incredible. And my goal to make it like interesting and more like tasty is to not just like steam or roast burdock and like add dandelion greens and what, like I want it to be interesting and appetizing and appealing. So yeah, if I'm like excited about something, I'm sure I'll share it. And I think it's a cool thing to share with people because it also teaches people that they can do this. And it's, I think a lot of like educational focus on this, like showing people what the plant looks like and how the different parts they can use and how they can eat it and whatever. So I haven't thought about it, but that's probably what I'll do.
I think that's part of what got me interested in hunting in the first place, is that I've been into foraging and wild foods for a really long time now. And I would always go out in my environment wherever I was and just think like, well, what would I eat here? What would I eat if I was stuck here? If I was out here and had no way to get home. And sometimes I've been in certain places where there was like no wild edibles. There were very, very little, like just like conifers, especially in the mountains in New Hampshire where I've spent a lot of time. There'd just be conifers and like nothing on the ground because a lot of the edibles are invasive plants. So you see them a lot sometimes in the suburbs or in these disturbed areas. And if you're not hunting and fishing, there's such limited food. I realized like you just have to. You have to hunt and fish to survive. And I'm just really interested in survival and living off the land in that way. And those are just essential skills for eating and living.
Totally. I think there's like 3 that are vegetarian. So they will be doing this project without any meat for their source of protein, which I'm super curious to see what they come up with. And the goal is to thrive and not just survive. Like the goal isn't to be like starving. So you want to like be getting all your essential nutrients and like not be so hungry all the time. But the other thing I was going to say is it's not only wild or native plants. It can be like naturalized plants. So like chicory here isn't native, I think. Pretty sure, pretty positive. We don't have the same one that you guys have on the East Coast. But I could harvest it because it's naturalized. So naturalized plants or like an abandoned apple tree that's been around for 100+ years that no one is like adding manure to or like maintaining in any way. So those count.
But that's super cool. I'm really excited to see that. Segueing into fishing, I would like to talk a little bit about the salmon fishing that you do. I know in the past I might have asked you about how you got started into that or how your family got into this, but I just think it's one of the coolest things that you're able to go every summer and do this. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, my dad has been going up to Alaska to go fishing since he was like 19. And he's he's in his late 60s now. So he's been doing it for that long. And my older brother started when he was like 12. And I started when I was 18, which was over 10 years ago now. I haven't gone every season, but on and off for over 10 years. I started on my dad's boat and then kind of explored with other captains. And right now I've been fishing with my older brother with the hopes to take over his boat and have my own crew. Yeah, I love it, and I don't want to say hate it, but it's very difficult, mostly emotionally, I would say. But I really enjoy being out on the water for a month and a half. And it used to be that there was like no service. You'd say bye to your people and you were just like off the grid for a month and a half. And now you can get service and you can like talk to people, which I guess is cool, but it also feels I really enjoyed just being like disappearing for a while and not having anyone to like respond to or communicate with. Like I was just out on the water and my mind would just like go. It would just be, it's so open, and I could dream and think so clearly, and I really enjoy it. And we fish for sockeye salmon on a drift net boat, a 32-foot gill netter. And yeah, I've also done some fishing down here off of Lummi Island, reef net fishing, which is a traditional indigenous method of fishing. It's really hard to explain because it's sort of like an optical, like you create an optical illusion with traditionally kelp, but we use like rope and like streamers. I would highly recommend looking that up, reef net fishing off of Lummi Island, because there are some great YouTube videos of like how it's done, and you don't catch as much as you do up in Bristol Bay, but you can catch plenty for your family and community, and it's fun. It's like way more relaxed and enjoyable.
That's awesome. How would someone do that? Like, if you didn't have your own boat, like if I wanted to go fishing, can you sign up for something? Are there's like charters that people take you out on?
For Bristol Bay?
I don't know. I guess either one, really.
I've had people reach out to me saying that they've never fished before and they're really interested in trying, and if I know anybody who's hiring. It's more like that. Like, that's how you get involved well, I guess there's a Facebook page that you could join, and it's like Bristol Bay Commercial Fishing or something. And people post on there looking for jobs and looking for like to hire people all the time. But I think the best way to do it is to like know someone or know someone who knows someone. Finding a job like that online is a gamble. And there are a lot of people that I would never want to work for up there. Partly because, like, I think one of my biggest values in a captain, someone who's, like, responsible for the crew and running the boat, is valuing safety and having safety be number one. And the currents are really strong and people die every year up there. So having someone who is really safe is, I think, really important. If you know someone who is a captain up there or they have like some kind of reputation, I think that's safer than meeting someone online who you don't have anyone to like cross-reference for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you're just one of the coolest people. I can talk to you all day about so many things. You just do so much cool stuff.
I'm so glad you're doing the podcast.
So I think we should definitely talk about Grocka Metalwork. So tell me about, well, first of all, how'd you come up with this name? What does this name mean for your knife business?
Yeah, I thought you'd ask that. I get that question a lot. Grocka is a nickname that was given to me by my dad when I was about 2, because I was a very like dense and stocky, like kind of muscular little girl, and super blonde, and I had a really low raspy voice. And I would come into the room just like stomping with like my low voice, and I'd project some whatever thing that a 2-year-old might say. And he started calling me Graka, like I was this like Czechoslovakian. This is we're not even Czech. And I don't know if this is like offensive. It might be offensive. But it wasn't my doing. But he would say that I'm this Czechoslovakian wrestler, and just like kind of make fun of me for being like a really, and then I ended up, it's hilarious because I ended up wrestling in high school, and I really loved it. And I feel like I just have like a pretty like stocky, dense body. So it felt very, I think, fitting at the time, but I hated it for most of my life. And when I was about, I think maybe like 20, some friends started calling me Graka after like hearing the story from probably my dad. And then I started to love it. It felt like really endearing. And now some people call me Graka, and figuring out a business name is so difficult. Like it's like it's like an extension of your identity. And I feel like it's a lot of pressure, like naming your dog or something, or probably like naming a kid. And I thought of Graka and was like, man, it kind of like goes with my like rougher side, or like my metal side. And that's what this business is. So it feels very fitting, and I really like it. So that's how Graka Metalworks came to be. It's like another part of me, my metal persona.
I like it. I think it sounds really cool.
Thanks.
Well, your knives are beautiful. I have one for me and my husband, and they're amazing. And then I have a bigger one, like a kitchen knife, and I'll probably get a lot more from you over the years as time goes on. But tell me a little bit about that process. I mean, honestly, I know very little about, people watch like Forged in Fire. We have like this idea of forges, but I don't know very much. I mean, to make knives just seems so cool to me, and I don't actually know where to start with that. So I don't know. Tell me a little bit about that learning process and what you love about it now.
Yeah, I make other things other than just knives, like spatulas and forks and ladles and hooks and that sort of thing. But the knives are made with the stock removal method, which is a different way of working with metal. You're not like forging out a small piece of steel like you would be with, like I do with other things. So the stock removal method is when you take raw, like soft sheet steel, and you cut out your shape of whatever you want, whatever knife you're making. And then you do all the profiling. I have a big grinder that I do all the profiling with, and then put a bevel on it and drill all the rivet holes, stamp it with your maker's mark, and then you heat treat it with the forge, or some people have like a fancy like knife oven that's like a kiln that gets to really high temperatures. But I use my forge and then quench it and temper it with it's like another heating process that basically like solidifies the new chemistry of the metal, which creates, like, after you heat it in the forge and quench it, it's kind of like fragile, like not like glass, but it's very it's really hard and not necessarily strong. So then tempering it brings the hardness down and the strength up a little bit, so it creates like a perfect balance of a good hardness and good like durability and strength to the metal. And then after that, I do all the finish grinding and like buffing and all that, and then I put the handle material on. Usually wood. I use all upcycled hardwood that's salvaged from all over, and usually has a fun story to it. Like, I have some wood from that used to be part of the Coney Island Bridge, the old Coney Island Bridge in New York. And like old houses in Seattle that were built with hardwood, or old boats that have been taken apart or replaced. So yeah, that's the knife process. And then the other stuff is more just like hammering out. It's like, I mean, working with metal or forging is kind of like it's like sculpting with clay almost, but instead of using your fingers, you have these other tools that you, like your tongs and then your hammer to shape the hot metal. But it's amazing. It's like Play-Doh, but it's much harder to work with than Play-Doh. But once you get comfortable with the hammer being like an extension of your hand, you can like really make a lot of good work with it.
Do you feel like you just had a knack for this? Like,
I love it. And I think I've always been like, I'm a pretty artistic person. I enjoy making art of all different forms. And I think working with metal feels it's a skill that is ancient, and I love that. Like that's a big part of it for me, that feels it's an ancient craft that more and more people are doing now. Like I feel like it's becoming more popular, but it feels like a dying craft. I think for me, I really like working with steel and fire, and I think it's like a good balance for my personality that's very like watery, and I don't know. I like working with the like raw metal and fire, and it's like sculpting. I have a blacksmith mentor that he's really awesome, and he's teaching me a lot, and I'm there's so much to learn, like endless things to learn. And I've seen some blacksmith shops that are just like so tricked out and have beautiful equipment that like make it so much easier to do like different steps of the process. And my shop is pretty primitive. It's pretty crude. and I think it's a great place to start. Like I can get a lot done in it, but I don't have like a power hammer that I would say most blacksmith, or every blacksmith I know, has a power hammer, or at least access to one. And it makes your life so much easier, and I don't have that right now. But I'm really excited to build my skills and build my shop as I get deeper into it.
yeah, it's amazing. I don't see a lot of women blacksmiths. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I would like to meet more. I know they're out there. I don't know any in my area. Um, but I think I've been just over like social media mostly, I've found some other women, or just like cool blacksmiths that have something to teach, that like share videos. And that's a really neat thing, because I feel like with an art that isn't very common, it can be hard to find community in your place wherever you live. So having those connections, like my mentor is in Massachusetts, and we just like do Zoom calls, and so, like he'll like set up the forge and video himself like making something, and then I'll try, which is like not ideal to do a blacksmith lesson over Zoom, but it makes it much more accessible to learn from different people. But
How did you connect with that mentor?
there's a program, it's Society of Inclusive Blacksmiths, and they are an incredible program. They do a lot of grants for I guess artists, like emerging artists or people who have experience. A lot of like people, or a lot of their grants focus on supporting artists who are a minority, like people of color, or queer people. It's really cool what they're doing. They're like really like their grants are so generous, and they have this program that's the mentor. It's like a mentor and mentee, and they basically pair you up with one of their a mentee with one of their mentors, based on like what skills you're looking to build, whether it's like building your business, or working on like wanting to make a hatchet, or wanting to make like get into knife smithing. So yeah, it's a really great program that I would recommend. checking out for any starting blacksmiths, because they also have a tool grant that I think they give, like, I don't know how much money they give, but it's like always going. So yeah, it's a great program.
That's amazing. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next for you in growing? So you have Wild Vitality Herbals, and you have Graka Metalworks. What's your next thing? What's your next endeavor? I mean, are you just growing one business over the other, working both of them? What are your goals coming forward?
That's a good question. Thanks for asking that question. I think my goals are to build my clinical practice with the herb world. And in the herb world, I want to have more clients, or build my client load, and teach more classes. I'd love to teach more like free community classes on like probably mostly wild plants, just because I feel like that's maybe more important than ever, to have some understanding of what plants you can eat if you need to or want to. So I want to do more teaching and more one-on-one work with clients. And then for the metal work, well, I'm about to move like my whole operation, so I plan on building out a bigger shop. And I started selling my work at Pike Place Market, which is a big, a huge, like a really old, big farmers market, but they have a lot of crafters also in Seattle, downtown Seattle. I want to just keep learning different blacksmith skills, and maybe also teaching at some point with that, but that requires more equipment, like multiple anvils, and that's really expensive. So that's like the long-term goal, is to do some teaching. And I guess another goal that I should say is I'm remodeling this little cabin that I'm about to move into, and my goal for my blacksmithing, partly to like build a portfolio, but also to like make my home like really cute and cozy, is to make as many things as I can, like drawer pulls and handles and like a towel rack and even like a toilet paper holder, just like everything that I can. So I'm really excited about that. That feels like a big project.
I love that. That's going to be amazing. So where can everyone find you, Grace? What are your different social medias or websites for your businesses?
My website is, I just launched a new website and I'm still working on building it, but it's called GrakaWorks. So www.grakaworks.com. And then I have, the only social media I have for my businesses is Instagram, but I have 2 different pages for Wild Vitality Herbal and Graka Metalworks. And Wild Vitality Herbal is where I'll be updating my process for the Wild Biome Project, and that's where I put like all my herb related stuff, like client work and classes that I'm teaching. And then the Graka Metalworks page is all of my metal stuff that I mostly right now I'm just posting about like what I'm making and when I'll be at Pike Place Market, and that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on today. That was a really fun conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Talk soon.
Fun.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to leave a review. In that review, I would love to hear what topics you'd like to see covered next and which guests you'd love to hear from in future episodes. You can connect with me on Instagram at Original Being Podcast, and be sure to follow, like, and share the podcast on all platforms to help spread the word. Thanks for listening.